Welcome to the final webinar for Vitality's Mental Health Awareness Week 2022. I hope you've enjoyed all of our events so far this week, from webinars to panel events to mindful drawing and visualizations. The topic of today's webinar, though, is finding opportunity in disappointment. We have a special guest joining us for today. But first, let me introduce myself. My name is Maggie Alphonsi MBE. I'm a director of the Vitality Champions Programme. I'm also a former England rugby player and a World Cup winner as well. I represented England 74 times, and in my spare time, I'm a pundit on the telly, and I will be your host for today's session. But joining us today, we have the one and only, the best rugby players in the world, Jonny Wilkinson CBE. One of the most decorated and recognisable faces in rugby union, with a whopping 91 caps for England. He's also a mentor, a coach, a podcast host, and a mental health advocate. But today we're not going to talk about rugby. Well, we might talk a little bit about it, but not too much. Today's conversation will be centered around mental health and redefining failure, and instead finding opportunity and growth which lies within disappointment. So first, let me bring Jonny to the show. Jonny, can you put your camera on and unmute yourself?
Yep.
Welcome,
Good day,
Jonny. Very well, very well. So the last time I saw you was, I think, at the end of the men's Six Nations out in France, when France won the big Grand Slam, beating England, which was a very special day. And it's been a few months since then. So how are you doing? How are you and your family?
Yeah, we're good, thank you. Yeah, enjoying life and what it brings, and navigating our way to towards, I guess, the life that we're picturing as being ideal for us, and seeing and updating that vision every day. And yeah, I think it's really a case of just sort of exploring what it means to make the most of each moment, and that includes obviously those around you, and but more importantly, very much yourself.
So you tell me you haven't been away on holiday? You've not had your flip-flops on?
We sort of, a little bit short, briefly, but the trip away, the summer holiday is still in the offing. It's still to come, which is kind of cool as well.
Brilliant. Well, look, we're here to talk about obviously mental health and redefining failure. So I guess let's start off talking about, I know during your rugby career you had lots of injuries and you've been open about your mental health. So I guess my first question is, at what point did you know that you were struggling with your mental health?
I'd known, I think, that I was experiencing crises type moments of real conflict that seemed just a bit out of proportion to what was recognized as the norm, if you know what I mean. So I kind of I'm sort of quite careful around how I depict or define mental health, because who knows what it is for anyone else. But for me, I grew up with crisis moments that just seemed to sort of bring me to a halt in life, and that was anything from from young ages, and it was sometimes around slightly hysterical and, again, disproportionate reactions to things that seem like things, and that means intensity of the actual reaction, but also the length of which the time duration of their reaction, as it was days and weeks and what have you. So I had that, and I saw specialists from young ages all the way through, in order to try and get a handle and get a grip on that, and unblock that kind of I guess unblock that sense of being completely stuck. But later in life, I guess I became gradually more aware of what that represented, and the fact that it was shifting much more towards an understanding that this was part of my life, not a wrong turn, and it was there for a reason. It is there for a reason, and that reason is far more complex and intricate and subtle and incredible than the idea that it's something wrong with me, and that I've just got this and I've got to get over it, any of that sort of stuff. So I guess that was how it matured in me and how it's maturing in me. But it's been there throughout my life, I guess, and my family have helped me to recognize, which is difficult from an outside perspective, what's rational, what's not, what's someone going through. It's very difficult, but very much creating an energy and a desire to explore it and to be okay with it, I guess, is what helped that maturation kind of expand to a place where it's become, I'm never going to say it's sort of in any way kind of an enjoyable part of life, but it's become a very, very key part of my life that I wouldn't shift. I wouldn't swap.
Well, I just want to unpick some of the things that you said. So you talked about seeking some support with a specialist or several specialists. Can I ask, who they were? I know you talked about going to see, I think it was a Buddha, and then quantum physics as well, doing some research around that area. Yeah, are you able to elaborate in that?
Yeah, so those kind of things were much more towards the latter end of that journey. When it was something that I was becoming very much proactively driven to explore myself. I think from a young age I was seeing whether it be behavioral psychologists or whether it be straightforward kind of counseling type of areas, and those were key moments. But the key is, I think, is that at some point there's a movement away from it being something you feel like is that thing you've got to just deal and it's in the way, versus something when just your passion triggers towards it. I think people sort of look at that as a kind of turning inward perspective, where you just become slightly curious and interested in it as an assistant and a guiding force in life, as opposed to a kind of a huge threat from the outside. And from in the middle of it, for me, that's been enormously difficult, because your first reaction is to think, well, when life's great, I'm just like this, and now it's like this. I have to get from there back to here, etc. But there's so much growth and opportunity. The stuff you mentioned in terms of quantum physics and Buddhism and self-investigation and yoga, and a lot of people sort of align me with the Buddhism thing, because it was how I ventured. I think how that passion was triggered in the conflict and the struggles. But I don't practice in those kind of ways. But I've explored to find what it is, where my highest passion is, where my highest excitement is, and it's always around this journey of kind of like, what's next? How do I expand? How do I reveal more of me? Whereas the old journey was more, how do I get stuff for me? How do I get trophies? How do I get people thinking how I want to think about me? How do I get people saying the things I want to say about me? How do I get things written about me? How do I get money and passion and possessions and all this kind of stuff? And it's all like an outside accumulation. And the switch in that journey has been like, how do I reveal more about me? Which is another way of saying, how do I reveal more about life? How do I reveal more about what really being alive means?
I love that you talk about being on this journey, and you sort of talk about that you've been on almost two journeys, like you said, your rugby career journey, but obviously you left rugby and you're on this different journey. And you talk about revealing more of yourself, and I see that almost associated with being vulnerable. Would you say it's been hard to be vulnerable, or would you say actually it's been fairly easy, especially in a sport of rugby where you're perceived to be, have to be macho, have to like keep it all in? Have you found that to be easy or hard?
It's the environment definitely has a part to play in it, but the inner environment does also. There's a certain kind of internal permission as well, which you do give away to the external, say, well, if this is how I need it to be on the outside, then I'll do this, then I'll feel comfortable doing this. But at some level, there's an inner permission, which actually is deeper than the external environment, that takes it's almost like into that whole kind of, you play your first game of rugby, you take your first kick. At some point, you've got to just go and do it, and you do it, and you say, yeah, I'm doing it, and you try and put in the parameters around that to make it sort of safe. So you do your practice beforehand, so that the kick's not going to be like this. You've got yourself, you recognize it, but you get used to it. What does it mean? You understand it enough, but at some point you've got to go, and when you feel that's right, I think it's key to act and come back to that confidence that it's not about how others react. It's a process for you. And it's so there's, again, the danger is you think, well, I'm going to let it out, but then straight away you go to what do people think about me letting it out. It's like it's never about that. It's about what's the letting out doing for you. And the vulnerability thing, it's a bit the very nature of revealing more of who you are, which is the great opportunity in this life. And it's kind of how, for me, everything on an external perspective is designed to kind of aid that process in some way, as much as sometimes it feels it can be doing the opposite. But that humility, it's very much like you've got to, in order to reveal something, you've got to take something off. And you can see so where I'm going with that analogy is that it's a shedding experience, it's a humbling experience, and the safety, secure experience is adding something on, you know, a bit more, if you like, from a physical perspective, but a bit more clothing. And then what that clothing looks like will start to tell people what the underneath is. And it's not how it works. You know, if I'm wearing this flashy, you know, World Cup winners coat, I'm kind of like, well, that's what people will think is underneath. But it's like they're two different dimensions. What's underneath has nothing to do with what people think in the first place, and it certainly doesn't have a physical, you know, kind of look and feel. It's an amazing experience, but in order to get to it, you've got to take things off. And therefore, for me, every kind of challenge I've faced, and there's no solution because it's a constantly ongoing process, but the next move and the transcending of it has always come by shedding, by taking away something. It's never about, oh, I've got this happening to me, I need to learn this and add this, and right now I've done it. It's always been a case of what do I need to remove? Like, what is this telling me to let go of? Not what is this telling me to go out there and add to me? And so that's the difference between the two journeys. When it becomes about adding, it's stress, because other people are trying to do it as well. You've got to fight, you've got to compete, you've got to compare, you've got to go out there and manipulate and try and you're using relationships with other people in order to get what you want. You're using the planet around you to get what you want. It's a completely different experience. Whereas that other journey, it doesn't require anything or from anyone. You have the opportunity in every moment to reveal, and as you do, with that revelation of more of you, it's a completely shifting and deepening relationship with life, and therefore experience. So you start to experience things on levels which 5 years ago would have made no sense. You'd have been trying to tell yourself, you know, this is how I feel about things, how I'm sensing things, how I'm perceiving, and you'd be like, what are you talking about? This is just, well, go on the journey. Whereas that 5-year version of you could say, if you keep doing what I'm doing, you can have more of this. You're like, yeah, I know what that more is. More stress, more fatigue, more you know, illness and issues in that respect, more conflict in my relationships, more isolation in terms of where I'm feeling. So it's such a powerful and, you know, an amazing opportunity. But the vulnerability does require revealing more of you, and more what's you, or in my respect, in my sort of through my eyes of my experience, what I'm revealing is not vulnerability. Vulnerability is the process through which I reveal. So it's not like, you know, I'm revealing and now I feel weaker. It's like, no, that's the process of taking something off that has become in some way part of you, because unconsciously we've bought into it. It might have started as a kind of idea, it might have started as an emotional reaction to something, but now it's become part of you. And sometimes the hardest bit is you don't even know it's there. And so you look around and think, what do I need to let go of? It's like, well, I need to have that revealed by what I'm experiencing. And then the process of letting go is usually in the saying yes to everything.
Jonny, I absolutely love the language that you use. So when you say vulnerability, I love it how you say it's not a weakness, because it isn't. It's the process, isn't it, of revealing more of yourself. And also I like the bit where you say revealing is almost just letting go. And I think the people who are listening to this webinar will definitely resonate. That will resonate with them. And I guess now I just want to shift over to mindset, really. I know you've talked a lot about that. I guess, would you say your mindset has changed a lot throughout, from your rugby career to retiring to where you are now?
Yeah, and it's great because the two things we're talking about are going to, you know, they're one. There are other ways, different doorways of coming in at it, according to, you know, the kind of present definition we have in society for, you know, this journey being over here and this journey being over here, but they're just different doorways in. And from that perspective, my mindset when I was younger and what have you, there's everything that's happening on every level is all interlinked. You know, it's not like different things. The desire and the drive and the motivation behind playing rugby, and the sort of the absolute kind of, I guess, need to win at some level and need to conquer and everything. It's all a representation of the same thing, and it's all important at that time. You know, and this is the key for me to understand. That's how it's meant to be. You know, for that part of my life. And when I say that part of my life, that's me breaking into it. There's my whole career. But actually, what I'm saying is, just the first day of that career was meant to be how it was meant to be. That's how I was, you know, for me, playing rugby at that time and playing rugby through my career was what I was supposed to be doing on this earth. And what I was going through was what I was supposed to be going through on this earth. And there's a huge amount of serving in that. The rugby's serving me. It's serving me in terms of, this is what I think I want. But it's also, you find out that everything you're doing is serving others. I don't mean that in a kind of sort of submissive way. I mean it in a kind of, you know, you're providing some kind of service to others without knowing it. So people come around and, you know, there might be people you're competing against for that position, and you win the position and they don't. It's a service to them. They then face that kind of, I didn't get what I wanted. How do I? It's all interlinked. Someone else does that to you. A supporter likes the way that you're playing. They find joy in that, and that brings something to their life. Or maybe you bring some sort of issue to, you know, a team. When you leave a team, move to another. It's all just interconnected. It's meant to be how it is. The idea that you can say, oh, what if I'd have had this mindset when I was back then, is irrelevant. There's no, you can never see things away from how you're supposed to be seeing them. And I guess just what's the understanding has deepened for me a little bit, or is at least expanding and becoming a bigger picture kind of idea. That I guess the big change for me now is that I'm moving towards the understanding that it's just not about me. And that's the big thing. When you're in a team playing rugby, you know, that's a bit of a rabbit hole to go down. It's going to have difficult consequences if you get this idea that this is about me somehow. You know, if I get this and I get this, and the team starts to go, oh, hold on, you're disconnecting from us a bit. And now, as much as you might be doing great in your own personal world, you can see how you're causing isolation. And that was my idea, is that my life is about me. And it seems really interesting to say that, but even the concept of the most beautiful things in life that come, like creativity and love and joy and inspiration, intuition and senses of peace and togetherness and all that kind of stuff. The idea that as an individual, you hold that and claim ownership of it, and that you can choose where you put it is amazing, as a kind of an amazingly, I think, I don't say dangerous, but amazingly kind of just short term and quite limited in its way. And then you look at the other idea about saying, we're talking about vulnerability as a mindset, and even just a kind of, I want to reveal. What you reveal is when I'm allowing myself to be vulnerable and I'm shedding, what am I doing? I'm getting out the way. Because if I keep shedding, more of me is moving. And as I move more of me, I'm becoming more loving, more creative, more inspired, more intuitive. So where's that coming from? Well, I'm becoming a channel for what's coming through me. Not I own something and I'm revealing it as I take bits away, so I can get to that pot in the middle that I can start having access to. It's recognizing the same thing you had as a child, which is, when you don't, there's not so much of you in the way, you understand passion and excitement like anything. You know what your calling is in every moment. This is what I want to do, and I'm just going to go for it. And then as adults, that's one thing people can't do. Can't find emotion, a passion, excitement in anything. And as we were talking about disappointment, or finding that kind of opportunity and disappointment, and everything takes forever to get over, whether you've got a grudge with people. But you look at a child, they're angry. The next minute, they're super happy, because there is this getting out of the way. It's just that they haven't had to get out of the way. They just aren't in the way yet. And coming back to that state just helps you realize that I'm not doing this I'm having the amazing privilege of feeling it and living it. And as I start to claim ownership of it and take credit for what I'm doing, you lose it straight away. And it's a really powerful opportunity to say the mindset is yes, to dream, hugely dream and get excited and find what it is that's coming through you. Is this is what I want in life right now, and go for it, dream it, all this kind of stuff, and then to relax and explore it and experience it and be aware of what's happening around you and engage in what's happening around you. But as soon as you get to that idea that I need to control how it comes about, my dream, and when it comes about, you start to assume ownership. And as soon as you do that, you get all the conflictual issues, like frustration, fear. So if I've got I'm a rugby player and this is what I want in life, and because I don't feel that kind of connection with me, just being like dreaming is my job and getting out the way and exploring, I need guarantees. I need to, and this is what I've learned already. And according to that, well, what if this doesn't happen? And this is defining me in society. And if it doesn't work out how I want, then oh my God, that's going to define me in that way. And everything's so important. I have to control that, and I have to move you out the way, and I have to do this because I can't trust that it's being worked out for me. All I do is fully engage, fully dream, fully engage, fully explore. And when I start getting in there, yes, I'll do those, but I won't fully engage because I'm going to sit back and just think it through. You're kind of like, you look at a rugby player who's trying to think their way through a performance, you'll see the one that's out the game.
Absolutely. Do you know what? I love it as well. You sort of talk a little bit around it's like kind of like being present and being in the moment. Is that what you'd sort of say?
Yeah.
It's about?
Yeah, because the very nature of having the idea that there's a me that's in the moment. Now you've got a me in the moment. You're constantly trying to line the two up, and you're always saying, "I just don't feel in the moment. I'm trying, but I just can't be present at the moment." And actually, when are you actually fully present? Well, when you fully engage, you forget who you are. In other words, you get out of the way. So people might say, when does time fly is another way of saying, when am I more present? And look at when you're watching a film or that you really love, or you're watching a performance at a theatre that you really love, or you're watching a family member play some sort of sport, or watching them engage, or you're even just watching your little child play, you find yourself going, well, if you could speak to yourself in that time, you'd say, what are you doing? You'd be like, there is no me. I'm part of this. I'm in this. And the beauty of that, if you use the analogy of watching a film, is that you feel like I'm in this film. I am this film. But I can't be hurt by the activity of the film. And now you've got your relationship with what's happening, I think, at a deeper level, is that we're in this. We're fully in this. And we are fully in this, and our intentions, and it's all coming through us, and it's all brilliant. But as soon as you sort of say, but I'm doing it, now you do get hurt. And it's tough though, because like I said, I'm talking about it in ideal terms, not in a kind of workable fashion of this is how I feel. Oh, don't worry, just listen to this and you'll be great. But this is my understanding that's come through about more of the nature of what's happening.
And you also talked about children, and I'm just going to come back to you. You're a parent now. Has that changed your mental health, mental well-being, how you view life? Has that changed in terms of thinking about it differently?
Do you know what? I think the obvious answer to that for most people would be yes, but for me, no, it hasn't. I think because it's been a kind of yes moment of seeing something deeper, the more intense. It used to be rugby, or it used to be other moments, and you sort of go, I'm so into this, and that would challenge you in so many ways. And now you have a child. You can't be any more into it, and you see how that challenges you, and you realize again it's the same thing. Is that if I suddenly start to claim ownership over my child, that she is mine, my child, and I start to claim ownership over an idea of what her potential is and what a great life for her will be, in terms of she should go to university and she needs to get this kind of job so she can be comfortable. It's all just spouting out old ideas of mine, and actually the point being that she's not mine. the same way that my own potential is not mine. It's bigger than me. She's way bigger than me. And so to think that I can sort of manage and kind of control something that's way bigger than me has to be the wrong way around. So hence the beauty of sitting around and just watching children. You're kind of like, wow, you know, this is the right way around. Yeah, yes, we need to sort of just look after the security side of things as best we can and do all the things, help maintain the body and maintain a secure structure and passage and whatever. But as soon as you start getting into this is what will be good for you, you're kind of like, interesting, interesting, good for me or good for you, you know. And like I said, it's the same with the rugby. You try and claim ownership of it, which is what I did when I was 24, 25, when I'd won a few things. I hated rugby. I just didn't want to play anymore. And because it was all stress and pressure and fear of failure and potential pitfalls everywhere. Whereas when I was 18, I didn't have any idea about how this whole professional rugby thing should turn out. So I was just fully me, and I was growing at a speed and in a way that was just beautiful. I was having those aha moments and everything. And then come to 20, like I said, mid-20s, all I'm getting is my own stuff coming out, and trying to get an aha moment out of an old idea is, you know, it just doesn't work. Aha moments come out of something new to you, and to be receptive to something new, you've got to let go. And with the injuries you mentioned, the answer there that I was not supposed to understand at that time for whatever reason was that you've just got to say yes. And my ownership was, but I was at the top and now I'm injured for a whole year and I should have still be at the top. My head's telling me that if I was still at the top, I could achieve this, and that's what I'm supposed to do. And I know what's right for me and where my potential is and what my life's supposed to look like. And I'm no longer dreaming it. I'm saying I have to have it, and I have to have it now, and I have to have it like this, how and when. And as I've done that, I've gone into a state of even more extreme stress, and hence, another injury comes along, and then another one, and another one. And at some point, things conspire, like an opportunity to move to France or what have you, that maybe the universe just sort of says, look, have this, I'm going to give you a clue. Rather than asking you to come up with the answer, I'm going to give you a clue. So go here and just relax. And as you do, you kind of go, oh yeah. But then sure enough, because you don't own it, the learning or the understanding, 6 months later, I'm back in that fire pit again, running around trying to claim ownership over the fact that supporters are shouting my name at the games now, and they're saying that I'm a success, and now I'm trying to own it again. And that's the thing, is that when things don't go how we want, and when they do go how we want, both of those lead to us feeling like, we want ownership. We want to somehow take credit for why it's terrible, which we're very good at, less good at taking credit for why it's good, but still wanting to own it. And at that point, we cut ourselves off from potential.
I'm just going to unpick a couple of things that you said. You mentioned about the fear of failure in that, and I guess the webinar is about how we how we redefine failure and how we see disappointment in a different way. So I guess throughout your career, how did you redefine failure? Because you said that you started to hate rugby, and I totally understand because of the journey that you went on. So how did you change that around then?
I think there just comes, there just does come a time when certain things are revealed to you, and not because someone says anything, but because it just, one day a thought comes up, like we're talking about inspiration, intuition, a thought comes up that challenges you, and that leads you to look at something, whether it be on the internet, or you lead you to meet a certain person, and you follow that, and then you end up experiencing this, and it just goes on a journey, and there's no turning back from that point. And some of those key understandings, they challenge for me anyway, they challenge my conditioned kind of closed circuit reactivity enough to help me sort of want to break the cycle. Nothing, I don't think, breaks the cycle for you. At some level, the desire is, I want to break the cycle. I want to go into that vulnerability. And what does that mean? It just means the same thing we've been talking about, getting out of the way, but it means understanding that, before a game, for example, to use that as an analogy, when you're kind of full of fear of failure, and you kind of ask yourself, well, I'm about to play rugby. Okay, what is it I really want? What is it I really want? I want to find out what I'm capable of. Okay. So if I said to you, Maggie, you know, you've got you're in charge of the England World Cup team, ladies or men, whichever one you want to choose, and you say, right, it's happening at the end of the year. You've got a year to plan your fixtures leading up to that World Cup game. You know, who are you going to play against? Who would you choose to play against in that year leading up to that World Cup? And you know, for me, the answer is, well, I'll take France, definitely. Okay, New Zealand, Africa, probably take Ireland in there a few times. France again, yeah, maybe throw, you know, definitely if play Wales, I'd love to play them away from home. Like, why are you doing this? You're not going to win all those games. Exactly, because we want to get better. And now going into a rugby game and saying, I don't care what happens as long as we win and I get what I want, is like saying, I just don't want to grow. And after a while, that is so life negating that it'll build up in such a friction, because that other voice is saying, no, you can't do this. You can't stop, because life, you know, and the universe in its way is expanding constantly, infinitely at its boundaries. That's what the nature of the universe is to expand, to explore itself. And you're saying no to that. And so it feels terrible. You know, looking for that guarantee, fear of failure, what ifing, survival mode essentially is supposed to be a very temporary, short-lived, acute experience. You know, something happens, you go out of it, and then you go, okay, come back to life, come back to living, not avoiding death or avoiding the end. And that survival mode for me became a massive reputational thing, where you say, oh, you know, my reputation wise, I want to keep this alive as it is. What I've got now is enough for me, that I want it to be enough to get me through every challenge. I don't want to touch it. But is it enough when you sit there? No. Why do you keep dreaming? Because it's not the natural state. You dream of more all the time. People say, oh, desire is terrible and you shouldn't have it too much because it's what, but it's like, but that's the nature of life. Desire is expansion. You're constantly saying, I want more. It's just through the mechanism it comes through, depending on how much is in the way. It comes out very individual if there's a lot in the way of desire. But when it's revealed and you go back beyond the individual, desire comes out more as a vision of what can work for everyone. And for me, the idea that this is how things have to be, and I'm refusing to say yes to anything that's out of the way, I'm just going to say no to it, frustration. And then because I get frustrated and I get hurt by that, when something else is about to happen, I'm going to what if and try and make sure that doesn't happen again. Mm-hmm. But like for me, you know, the way I responded to things when I was very young, I created emotional defense mechanisms or emotional reactions that followed by defense mechanisms to guard it up, to say, I don't want that to happen again. But unless I get access to it again, that's the end. If I stay in survival mode, I can't grow, I can't evolve, I can't change, I can't anything. And yet you just sit for a second and wait for your mind to work, and it'll start moving towards, what do I want? What would be nice? Wow, that'd be amazing. Imagine if that happened. You're like, this is the nature. But there's that voice saying, come on, come on. And the other voice saying, no, I don't want it. I want to stay with what I've got. And yet, even if you ask, is what you've got what you want? You're like, no, I don't want to feel the way I do about things. All right, but you're saying also at the same time, you want to keep that. And this conflict is one that brings about that vulnerability of just saying, you know, before a game, for example, if we win this, oh, that would be amazing because it's what I've been dreaming on. If we win it this way, that would be cool because that's what I've been imagining. Mm. But if we don't win this, or if for me personally it doesn't go how I want and I'm challenged by that, now I'm going to grow way more than anything. So I'm saying, right, I'm going to grow from this and get what I want, or I'm going to not get what I want and really grow. You're like, well, that's a win-win. And actually what you start to do, as I've said about, you know, how would you plan your World Cup year? What you start to do is realize it's in the second one where the real opportunity is. Mm. Translating that back from, instead of it being about winning a game, it's now about experiencing those tough emotions. That's where life comes alive, where it's time to put on the playing kit and go, right, I'm in. Not to put down tools and say, right, look, just get rid of this and now I'll come back in when it's quiet. it's time to be vulnerable in those moments where the emotions are rife, to sit in them, to experience it, and to have that deeper knowing that this is not, as for me, my understanding was, it's not a wrong turn. This is the path, but it's also a path that it's not going to end anywhere. It doesn't lead to a destination, because it's the idea there's an actual destination which reverse engineers this concept of controlling how and when. So it's like, yeah, I'll go on a path that goes anywhere, but it must end here. And sooner or later you start thinking, hold on, it's not going to end there, is it, if it's going this way? So I better pull the path this way. You're like, no, the path will go to what it is you really desire, but it'll do it in the most unimaginably intricate and an amazing way if you allow it. And the best you can get if you pull it around is you'll get what you want and you'll hate the experience. Hence, I talk about my England thing is, I look back at it and having fought the experience and got what I wanted to a degree, I look back and kind of go, was that career lived fully? It's kind of like, for most of the time, no, I fought it. It still was happening, but I just was heavily in the way of it, which meant I did it in an uninspired, unintuitive, uncreative, unloving way. And it was very much the part of my career was that when I was younger, I was hugely creative and inspired in that way. And people were like, I've got so much to learn about the game. And in learning about the game and what was going out there, and also combining my present fixed sort of internal personal sort of stance on life, those two things created to come up with some really severe rules about how things have to be, and hence goodbye to the creativity, the spontaneity, and the joy of it all.
Well, I love what you said, and I just want to sort of touch on a bit the work that you do as you coach, you mentor. I know that you've been in the England camp a few times. Obviously working with the likes of Owen Farrell, George Ford, and George Smith as well. Marcus Smith, sorry. So I guess the question I want to ask you is, have you used your experience to help them and help them, I guess, redefine failure? Because they're all on their journeys, especially Marcus Smith, the young one who is getting all this profile and challenges as well. Have you used your experience to help them?
It's the experience and the memories I have, they are good ways of creating analogies and reference points, but they're not where the intelligence is. As we've said, it's not, the experience is kind of, the intelligence is simply just here, and tapping into it is for me, if I go and do a session with these guys, or if I do a talk with you now, if I come in here with a script that says, this is what my experience in my life tells me is how, what a good interview is. I've got some points here about, maintaining eye contact and making sure, and I want to get this point in because, I've just heard this on the TV, or I've read about this, and this will sound great. Now, as you're talking about your question, you realize it's not about what you want anymore. It's about me saying, yes, a maggot, and you're going, where the hell's that come from? What's he talking about? But you realize that it's me deciding what this interview needs to be, which doesn't work for either of us. It makes me sort of out, it just doesn't connect. And it's the same thing if I go to a coaching session with Marcus. If I've got an idea even before that starts of how this session could go, I'm doing that. It's not relevant. Even 2 minutes before on the side of the field is not relevant to the first thing we do. I have to just go in there knowing that the dream of what I want is, what do I really want out of this session? I want both of us coming out having revealed something new, expanded. And as you expand as anything, with more movement, more space, and less blockages and filters, if you like, things flow more seamlessly. You include more inside that thing. So as you expand, you flow. So you kind of just like, I just want both of us to go into new space and grow and everything. It's kind of like, how are you going to do that? I don't know yet. Well, that's weird. That would freak me out like anything. If I was 20 years ago playing rugby, I'd be like, but you've got to know. Like, no, I don't. That's the whole point. I don't know how and when, but I know it's happening because I want it and I'm committing to it, and therefore I'm going to have that trust, and it's going to come out. And every session does that. And this interview now, it's why I love doing these things, is that there's been the majority of what I've said, I've never said before. Never. And I won't remember it either. And I won't think about doing it again. But this is the point, is you put yourself in a position where you're like, but things could happen, and you're like, yeah, just go. What will I find out? I'll find out actually some more stuff that reveals where I am at the moment. I'm not saying that what I'm saying is helpful or going to be great, but for me, it's an experience of being like, oh, okay, wow, interesting. But what do you do with it? Nothing. Just go back to dreaming, because it's done its job. Now dream again. What do I want? So you turn up to that session with Marcus or Owen or whatever, and you just start. And then very quickly you're like, hold on, let's just try this. And it sounds, obviously you need some structure around to ensure that, it doesn't last for 5 hours and it doesn't last for 5 minutes. And you have small little ideas, but that keep you in alignment. And those ideas, some of them go out the window as soon as you say, because the first question I'll have on a coaching session I have with Marcus is the same one you gave me at the start of this interview. How's life? How you doing? And as he starts to speak, or Owen starts to speak, or George Ford starts to speak, you kind of go, my session's coming. Keep talking. My session's coming. And all the time to keep going, how are you feeling with that? My session's coming. So it's hugely relevant to that player then, not to the weekend they just played, just relevant to who they are now. And when who you are now comes out, and who they are comes out right now, you get the real deal and the real opportunity. But if you meet up with saying, this is my old ideas, I'm going to put them in front of me and they're going to talk, my old defense mechanisms, and you're going to put yours up in front, we'll have a conversation between two actors, and at the end of it we'll walk away with nothing. Maybe some good TV, some good theatre, but you don't get it. And that, coming back to your vulnerability, is that the opportunity is here and now, and who you are in the here and now is always perfectly equipped for the here and now. But the old you is not equipped for the here and now, and the now you is not equipped for the future. So stay out of those zones, because when you start trying to go into the future going, I'll do this, and then this, hopefully this will happen, but if it does not do this, you're like, how's that feel? Terrible. Stop doing it. Just trust that, actually engage here and now, have your dreams, whatever structure you feel like, I just need to know that, but keep it unobstructive and keep it sort of dominating, and leave more room for the now you.
I guess you've already touched on this, but I want to sort of elaborate a bit more. The flow, intuition, you've talked about that throughout our talk, and I know you talked about it previously. Are you able to just elaborate a bit more on that?
Defining that as a concept is quite tricky, because it's very similar to the idea of being in the zone. But the nature of the flow of, say, for example, like a river, or something like that, is that it flows most powerfully when there's nothing apparently solid in its way that causes it to have to find that kind of next path, which then starts winding corners, and it starts to it's still beautifully flowing, which is why allowing that is so powerful. It's not a case of saying I have to remove these old ideas that are in the way of my flow. It's a case of saying, well, how do you sort of get in contact with them? You just let them out, allow them, because the whole idea about trying to remove something is you keep it through whatever fear or need or whatever, you keep it in place because it's actually the fear or need. And if you get some kind of like, I have to get rid of that, okay, I feel better, well then you're really validating that behavior, so it stays at the top of your mind. It's like, right, well, I need to go around sorting stuff out. It's like, well, no, what about just allowing and letting that space? And so flow is massively about allowing. It's also about understanding that when that boundary of who I am is softened and the outside and inside become one, that's the flow. That's the bigger picture connection. And navigating your way through and around that boundary is done mentally. And living life through the mind is trying to live life through the mind. It's not flow. Flow is the intuition It's the natural understanding that comes from oneness. The idea that, okay, I want this to happen. Well, go sort of merge with it to understand. Grab it, include it as part of you, and then understand the dynamics from having the whole picture, rather than standing at distance trying to work out. It's a bit like, for example, trying to kick a rugby ball 50 meters through a set of posts. Now, when you stand at the back of your run-up as an individual who needs that ball to go through, and you separate yourself from the ball, from the feel of it, from the engagement, what you end up with is thinking, I've got to kick this tiny thing 50 meters through those tiny posts. And you kind of go, and it's too much. You can almost see people physically crumble when they're trying to do it through the mind, through separation. But when you just feel it and you know it, because you let go of, well, it could do this, you go, yeah. And then suddenly you do, and it's just so simple. Because you realize that ways of looking at it. One is that there is no distance between that. It's just all in me. And the other perspective that kind of means is in a way that you understand that my responsibility is this tiny bit here. I don't have responsibility for the big outcome. I have responsibility for what I can do. And that again is another way of looking at flow, is by saying, yeah, I really want that to happen in the future. Yeah, okay, so what's your part? Just enjoy the now, flow. What's my part? I need to work out how it's going to happen. Complete lack of flow. I need to go and work out, oh, why has that happened? What's that? No, it was supposed to be like this, but that person's coming and they're going to offer this person the job. And if I don't get the job now, that means I'll never have that major job in that house. And I need to work out, I need to go and stop that. And maybe I can do something slightly sort of, kind of nefarious in my interest here about, like, oh, just try and, you're like, no, trust that, this is part of it. What's it trying to tell me? Come back to your flow. And suddenly, oh, that's interesting. Would you like to come and work for us? We've got this great opening. Oh, that's interesting. What's the job? What's that thing you really wanted to do? Oh, wow. But in a way you'd never thought of. Oh, okay. I'd like that. Versus now somehow down the line, people are looking at you being like, oh, how can you be so, sort of conniving with that person there just because they got, and you're sort of going, it's not really me that does this. I didn't want to do that. It's just, it's the two things of realizing that, just stick to your lane and understand that lane is huge. It includes everything. That's why you can stick to it. But when you're in that individual mind of being like, I need to work everything out, it just feels like it's too much, because it is too much to calculate and deduce and to put formulas and equations and work out how everything's going to be, when you can't even work out, the science can't even work out what this computer is I'm looking at in terms of the material of it. It's solid. They're trying to look at how is it solid. We can't work it out, and yet we're trying to work out how all the life on Earth and universe connects. The only way you can have that understanding is to become part of it. And again, we're back to that vulnerability of to get out of your own way and see that those revelations are bigger pictures, where you start to speak to someone and think, I'm getting a feeling of what's right here, not my old ideas telling me, well, hold on, get your chin up, you should be happy all the time. It's like, well, where does that come from? These kind of old ideas of the individual, they just block that flow. But again, they're still valid experiences because they're trying to tell us something, so they're still worth listening to. It's not a case of I'm going wrong. It's still just become aware and see that everything is a helpful pointer, I think.
Jonny, I love it. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. I would crumble even if I had 20 meters away from the post to kick the ball. So 50 meters, I would break down. I'll be honest with you.
We all have our special areas, don't we? I'm sure everyone looks at everyone and says, well, I'm the same. You look at someone and they say, oh, how did you ever do that? You're kind of realizing, well, how have you been able to do that? And I'm like, well, I just do it. Yeah, well, I just do it. Well, hold on. We need to go deeper and become more aware of how we do it. And then we can start helping. But going into an environment and saying, well, I do this and it works for me, you should do this, is kind of, again, the end of flow, like we said before. And it's often the way of, one person has a good idea and someone else reads it and puts their spin on it, someone else reads it, and by the fourth or fifth generation, we're down to it being incredibly destructive. The good idea is kind of like, that's interesting, but it's always about what does it say in my life. And you know, my brother keeps reminding me of a good one from Bruce Lee, which is somewhere down the lines of, take what's useful, discard what's not, and add what's uniquely yours. And it's kind of, it's nice, you know, it's like listen and hear that, and then add the part of you. And if it's not useful, move, and just don't. Yeah, there's no kind of, oh, how come they're getting it and I'm not, and how come it's working for them? It's like, it's not. There's no comparative journey. There's no relative importance in life. It's just, yeah, this is, like I said, I have those crises moments that other people don't. And they don't look at me and go, oh, lucky you, and I don't look at them and go, lucky you. Just kind of go, this is my calling. This is my reason for being here. And okay, society might decide that some are better than others, you know, like a professional sports player versus someone that works somewhere else, but that's society's fault. That's got nothing to do with the internal individual sort of explorations and taking places of that are happening within everyone. Are just, they're equal in every single way. And hence, when you can meet someone and have that kind of recognition that it's not, like we said, two actors meeting each other where I'm acting as being like, oh, I'm a success, I did this, and look at you. It's like, or I'm older and I've had this experience and you're just a young kid. You're like, none of this is relevant. When you mentioned about the coaching, what you turn up is to say, this, I'm an energy sort of happening in form and like a process, and so are you. And we've met because those two energy processes are relevant for each other for whatever reason, and we've been attracted to each other. And so it's kind of like, how can we recognize how we're being served and how we're serving here? But as soon as you say, right, well, I'm 40 years old or whatever, and this is a 10-year-old child I'm talking to about kicking, so you suddenly assume I know everything, you know nothing, let's have a chat. You're like, who says that's a 10-year-old child? That is an energy intelligence, as we've seen looking at young children, that can change lives and worlds. But even though it's not young children, it's just an energy form. Age and importance and all that stuff is society's invention. There is amazing happenings. You look at the power of a newborn baby to completely change a life, and yet we still go by the age, well, if I've got more ideas and more conclusions than you, so I'm more important, I have more to say. Whereas in fact, actually, it's the opposite. The most vulnerable are the ones that have it all to say, but they don't need to speak to say it. It's shown within the inspiration example.
Jonny, I'm going to keep that quote. That quote is stuck with me. I'm going to, and all the bits that you said to that, it's just really resonated with me. I'm conscious of time, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to quickly move on to some questions that were sent in before the start of our webinar. So the first question I'm going to ask you is, has movement and exercise help improve your mental health and mental well-being?
Yeah, definitely. Movement, like anything in life, everything's constantly changing and in shift and in transition, and so do we need to be. Anything that stays sort of statutory and still, it goes stagnant. You look at even just water in nature, you know, it's such an amazing thing, but you leave it without movement, it goes stagnant. It becomes sort of like almost what it's, you know, something different. And I think that also the other thing about movement and those kind of things, reminding yourself of your full range of who you are. So being able to reach back to where you can reach. Flexibility, so important in terms of reminding yourself of your full scope and reach as an individual. And as you spend more time not exploring that old range of movement, you become, you know, use it or lose it effective. You become a hunched over version, and suddenly someone says, oh, do you remember when I could link my arms behind my back? You're like, those were the days. Well, they don't have to be. And as you look after your strength training and your flexibility, you remain so capable and able to do what it is you want to do. And that's, you know, such a powerful thing in life as you get older, to be able to continue to say, yeah, well, do you want to do this? Yeah, but you're this age, and you know, I'm looking after myself, and movement is a huge part of that. It allows you to express your inner you know, self through your physicality.
I love that. That's really good. Yeah. Do you know what, John? I'll be honest with you, I still can't get my hands behind my back, and I like to think that I'm a young 38-year-old, but yeah, still working on that. Another question I'm going to throw at you is, I guess, do you ever feel overwhelmed? And if so, how do you deal with it?
Yeah, all the time. All the time. Deal with it by, as we've been saying, by recognizing the sheer opportunity of it in terms of what it's pointing at. And the answer is not to manage it and put it aside somehow and deal with it, because what you don't accept and say yes to stays out in front of you, which means you just meet it again and you meet it again. And you meet it's a bit like that kind of awkward conversation you've got between you and someone else. You keep going, yeah, we'll just talk about other stuff, and both of you looking at each other being like, let's sweep it under the carpet. And next time you meet, let's sweep it under the carpet. Let's time it's like, well, face it, get it out in the open, and then you can start to say, well, imagine what relationship we might have. I don't know, but it could be amazing. It's definitely, what I know is if we keep doing this, we're going to keep getting this. And I think the thing with being overwhelmed is to sit and say yes, and as much as you can, and just sit in it and do the things that don't necessarily, as long as the overwhelming is not a physical survival issue. If it's something that you recognize as being maybe a historical issue with yourself that has that keeps repeating and reappearing in life around certain environments that you consider to be safe, then do the opposite of survival. Explore it. So as you're walking down the street, do whatever it takes to relax your shoulders and swing your arms. Do the opposite of what your survival is telling you. So when you get hunched and you go here, with your mind, just keep saying yes to it. When your mind is trying to say no, just say, yeah, it's here. What's it supposed to be? I don't know. But what if this happens? I don't know. Doesn't matter. I'm going to sit and I'm going to breathe and I'm going to understand that this doesn't define me anymore. And what's it going to lead to? That's the big part about being comfortable of saying, I don't know. I don't know, because I don't know what this universe is about. I don't know anything about me or who I am really. And I'm going to start therefore by saying, well, if I don't know that, how do I know what this feeling is about? Yeah. And then therefore I'm going to explore it through those eyes and just see that, because, the other idea of it, and obviously breathing and taking short walks or surrounding yourself with people or sometimes distracting yourself are key things. So make sure you have that environment as best you can, but just recognize that it's when you look at pictures of people and you say, oh, aren't they doing great? I wish, I bet they never have this. That's another old idea. I know, speaking to you, I'm sure we could have a chat about saying, oh, have you had this kind of thing? If I had this kind of thing, yeah, all the time. All right. Okay. What is there to do about it? Explore it, because, if you don't say yes to it, 50 years from now, it might not be such a great idea to be saying, yeah, I've still got it. Mm-hmm. Okay. Say yes to it now. Have that conversation with it now that says, I'm willing to just see what you're about.
Thanks, Jonny. I'll give you one more question. I guess, how do you overcome feelings of imposter syndrome?
Yeah. It's funny that we should have this conversation and get to this in the last, whatever period of time there is, because it's probably one of the fundamental parts of connecting to that potential and growth opportunity. It comes from that space of, we were talking about just there, about saying yes to things, and the other one is about having trust, able to say I don't know, and trust that this is part of the path, not a wrong turn, and to trust in the unknown and everything. And that trust, the ability to have that relationship with life, starts with the trust you have in yourself and that trust in who you are. And that, I think, comes down to understanding that your worthiness. And the big one that we have, I think, through society and its conditioning and through the cultural handing over of whatever it's been, and part of just being human at the beginning anyways, is that we're born into a space where we don't feel worthy of having our dreams. So we fight to make them happen, because no one feels worthy enough that they can have what they want just because they're them. Because you're alive, you have that right to have what you want. So much of that kind of stance or conditioning is brought about by all kinds of conditioning over lifetimes and lifetimes of coming into a space of being, and generation to generation, coming into a space of feeling like I've got to go out there and make this happen for me. And even when I do make it happen, it's going to get taken away. Instead of realizing that I'm worthy of having what I want, and I'm worthy of being here, and this whole universe is laying itself out for me so that I can recognize more of my worth and who I am. And that's happening for everyone. That's how worthy we all are. And I think the idea for me was exactly that, not having that trust in myself, which then led to not having trust in other people, not having trust in life, meant that, well, let's practice for 3 hours a day in order to get permission to then let go on the field and have a go. And if anything went wrong, I'd focus massively on what's going wrong, because that's the trust saying, oh, there you go, told you, for that 5 seconds there, it was terrible. Ignore the 99% that was amazing. Told you, there it is, confirmation, you're not worthy. Instead of constantly reminding yourself that you are worthy by simply being alive, but what makes you unworthy is thinking, but I haven't got it now. And if I have got it now, I'm going to lose it because I'm not worthy. Instead of just realizing that there is no place to end up. You don't, for me, this is speaking all from my personal experience here, you get to the World Cup final and you win these things and you kind of go, did it? I mean, what more could you want in terms of an affirmation or a reaffirmation of your worth? You did it. You're there. You were given it. Oh my God, you must feel so worthy. How do you feel? Like an imposter. What? Yeah, yeah. And what are you going to do to wake up tomorrow and be like, I've got to get moving again. I've got to get achieving. Well, let that be a lesson at some point to be like, the beauty of life is experienced in the space between where I am and where I want to be. If someone said that's it for now, you've got to stay as who you are, you'd be like, oh my God. And if you get to where you want to be, you'd be like, oh my God. And what is that space in between? Challenge, emotional challenge, incredible experiences that you're unaware of, connections with people, disconnections with people, enormous sort of vulnerability, this kind of stuff, sometimes boredom, monotony, but it's all a deeper message of it's helping you. You've dreamed this, and this is part of getting from there to there, and it won't let you get there because there's no such part of life that has got any destination in mind. So that imposter syndrome, it's just part of the middle bit. You aren't an imposter. I'm not an imposter. I wasn't an imposter. I didn't deserve it. Did not deserve it. It's just part of that space. Listen to that space and realize that it's not a journey that goes from where you want to be, where you are, to where you want to be. It's a journey that goes deeper into who you really are. Is another way of describing that space. And imposter syndrome is a great pointer to be like, hold on, interesting. Why do I feel that? Where's it come from? Where's this? And then say, well, what if I just relaxed in that space and I heard a little bit more about what it's trying to tell me? My thing tells me now that it's an amazing kind of sort of doorway into lack of connection with my true self and distrust and what have you, that is the secret to just so many amazing opportunities to be vulnerable and go and see what more of life is all about, touch a bit more of life.
Jonny, that was absolutely brilliant. I'm going to bring our session to an end. Your words have absolutely resonated with me, and I hope everyone who's watching, it's also resonated with them. It's some really amazing points, and thank you so much. I'm going to just quickly wrap up this session, really. Thank you to everyone who submitted some questions. Sorry we weren't able to get to all of them, but if you'd like to see more events like this, please do let us know. Once the webinar has ended, a screen will pop up with a feedback survey, and you'll also receive a follow-up survey via email. And we do read and take on all of your comments and suggestions, so huge thanks in advance for any feedback that you do send over. Don't forget to check out our YouTube channel, Vitality UK, where you can catch all the events from this week and other live webinar recordings too. If you'd like to find out more about the support of Vitality offer, please head to our website, vitality.co.uk. And once again, thank you for watching, thank you for listening, thank you, Jonny, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Pleasure.
Thank you.